There's something about the beginning of Ramadan that I have come to understand differently over the years. When I was younger in my practice, I expected this month to immediately make me softer and more calm, more spiritual in a way that felt like it was emotional. And I thought that once the fast started, there was going to be some kind of clear shift in my inner state that was flipping a switch from the dunya to devotion. Sometimes that happens in small ways, but more often than not, what actually shows up first is something a lot less flattering. I notice irritability, I notice fatigue, I notice how quickly my patience thins out when the day starts stretching long and there ain't no food, no caffeine, no small comforts that start helping to regulate my mood. For a long time, I interpreted that as a spiritual shortcoming. I thought if Ramadan was working, I should feel elevated, not exposed. But what I've come to realize is that Ramadan don't create those reactions. Instead, it just slowly reveals them. In the old spiritual language of this tradition, that revelation was never considered a failure, it was considered mercy. The scholars of the heart used to describe the Nafs not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as something to be understood, refined, disciplined, and eventually illuminated. Exposure was not humiliation, it was unveiling. Ramadan in that sense is less a punishment and more of a mirror that's held out in front of you. Outside of this month, most of us live with constant forms of micro relief. If we're hungry, we eat. If we're bored, we reach for our phone. If we feel anxious, we distract ourselves. If we feel desire, we soothe it almost immediately. There ain't much space between impulse and response. And because of that, we rarely see how dependent that we are on instant regulation. When Ramadan starts, that space starts to widen. You feel hunger, but you don't respond. You feel irritation, but you delay your reaction. You feel discomfort, but you sit with it. And in that gap between sensation and action, something starts to be visible. It ain't something new, it's something that was always there. What surfaces in the first days of fasting ain't a new ego forming. It's the same ego, just without its usual buffers. I used to approach fasting like it was a fight. Internally, the language was combat. I thought the point was to suppress impulses and override them, and override the Nafs through force. That framing made the month heavy. It turned the fast into this kind of internal wrestling match where I was the opponent and the referee. Over time, I realized that suppression creates tension, and tension feeds ego in a subtle way. When I tried to crush discomfort, I became rigid. When I tried to silence irritation, I got harsh with myself, and that harshness don't purify you, it tightens you up. There's a quieter way to understand what's happening. Fasting ain't about pretending you don't feel hunger or anger or desire. It's about noticing how quick you usually obey those impulses. The fast slows that obedience down. It forces you into awareness. And awareness, when it's honest, is uncomfortable before it's liberating. You start to see how much of your emotional stability is built around consumption, how often you regulate yourself through stimulation, how easily your mood shifts when your comfort's interrupted. And that observation can either make you defensive or it can make you curious. If you become defensive, this month feels like deprivation. If you become curious, it feels like exposure. There's something deeply psychological about that exposure. When relief is delayed, your attachment patterns become visible. You start to notice whether your impatience is really about hunger or about control. You begin to see whether your frustration is about fatigue or about not getting what you want when you want it. Salah during Ramadan shifts as well. You start to stand in prayer, physically weaker, you bow and prostrate without the same level of energy you might have during other months. And because of that, the prayer loses some of its performative edge. You can't rely on enthusiasm anymore. You're confronted with your own fragility. That fragility can feel irritating or it can feel grounding. It depends on how you meet it. The Quran speaks about restraint and taqwa, but restraint is often misunderstood as suppression. Suppression pushes something down. Restraint allows something to exist without acting on it right away. That distinction matters. One builds conflict, the other builds inner stability. Ramadan trains that stability slow, not by removing desire, but by lengthening the distance between desire and response. That distance is where sincerity matures. When you act only because it's easy, your worship is shallow. When you act, even when you're uncomfortable, something deeper starts to form. Not a performance, not an identity, presence. The inner traditions talk about ikhlas, sincerity, as it grows in discipline. Nobody sees you choosing patience over reaction. Nobody applauds your restraint. But something in you changes quietly. That lengthening strengthens your awareness, and awareness changes a person more permanently than being forceful ever could. In the early days of the fast, the ego becomes louder. That don't mean the month is failing. It means the noise was always present, and now it ain't no longer being drowned out by your stimulation. Without food, water, habitual comforts, without the usual distractions, the internal dialogue becomes a lot easier to hear. The real question ain't whether you feel calm. The real question is whether you're willing to observe what surfaces without judging it immediately. If irritation comes up, can you see it clearly instead of condemning yourself for it? If craving intensifies, can you acknowledge it without dramatizing it? If fatigue makes you shorter with people, can you recognize that reaction as information rather than identity? Ramadan becomes transformative when it shifts from a month of control to a month of study. Not study of others, but study of yourself. Instead of asking whether you're being strong enough, you begin asking what exactly is being revealed when strength feels thin. Instead of trying to silence your impulses, you examine your relationship with them. And then in that examination, something softens. Ego don't dissolve because you starve it. It softens when you stop automatically obeying it. The softening is subtle. It ain't dramatic. It don't feel like fireworks. It feels like increased tolerance for discomfort. Less urgency to satisfy every internal demand. By the end of the month, if you've approached it this way, you may notice that hunger don't destabilize you the way it did in the beginning. And that ain't because hunger disappeared. It's because your attachment to immediate relief loosened. And that shift carries beyond Ramadan. So if these first days feel louder internally than you expected, don't rush to label it as failure. It's simply an honest look at yourself without anesthesia. The deeper invitation of this month ain't to prove how disciplined you are. It's to see how you relate to discomfort, desire, and delay. Between Fajr and Maghrib of each day, something in you is being exposed. What is being exposed is not meant to shame you. It's meant to show you where you are attached, where you're reactive, where you're still seeking relief in things that were never meant to carry you. The goal ain't to emerge from Ramadan as somebody who feels superior. It's to emerge as somebody slightly more aware of their inner movement and less ruled by them, slightly more present with Allah in quiet moments that nobody else is ever going to witness. The question ain't whether you can endure the hunger. It's whether you are willing to observe what emerges in that exposure and let it teach you something positive about yourself that you can take into the rest of the year. I thank you for your love and support to this work.